Hey, I'm Ron Drotos from keyboardimprov.com, and welcome to day 14 of my 31-day tribute to Keith Jarrett called The Art of Keith Jarrett, where we're exploring concepts and ideas in his music and sometimes particular pieces to inspire us with our own music and to pay tribute to this great musician who's inspired me, you, and so many others. I'm thinking back to some early interviews that Jarrett would give, where there's one collection of interviews which is great. It's in a book form. It's by Len Lyons. It's called The Great Jazz Pianist, and Jarrett's in there. The interviews were originally in Keyboard magazine, originally called Contemporary Keyboard, and this interview made a big impression on me, partly because I bought it in the 80s when it was I bought the book in the 80s before the internet, so you just couldn't find 1,000 interviews with people, you know, and I used to read them over and over again, and I can still remember all those interviews. My own piano teacher, Billy Taylor's in that book, Keith, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Mary Lou Williams, Teddy Wilson, great pianists, Dave Brubeck, Sun Ra, who I used to go see. And sometimes in these early interviews, Jarrett would play the contrarian sometimes. I think he wanted to get certain points across and sometimes didn't answer questions directly. So Len Lyons, and then probably in other interviews, people would ask him things like, what pianists influenced you? Fair question for a pianist. Who was influencing you? And Jarrett wouldn't answer. Obviously, there were some pianists who have influenced him when he was young. He's talked about it in other places since, and I discussed it in an earlier video in the series. But he wouldn't say things like, you know, oh, I loved, you know, John Lewis or Dave Brubeck. You know, he would say things like, well, I'm not really influenced by pianists. It's the history of the piano that's influenced me. So we have to go back to Chopin. And everybody who's ever played the piano, or the way the piano is constructed, influences me. And fair enough. I mean, there's something to be learned from that a lot of these interviewers did not follow up on, because they were just so frustrated. They thought he was just avoiding the question. But I think he was really trying to tell them something. Hey, I think a little differently than that. And they said, well, how do you think? Maybe we could learn from you, right? But a lot of interviewers would get a little flustered, and maybe you're not answering the question, or try to just ask another question at that point. You see that a lot in the interviews with him over the years. But in any case, later on, he started talking about it a little more. And the truth is that while he did like some pianists growing up, he said he was more influenced by sax players. And people like Lee Konitz and Sonny Rollins, he's mentioned. And the reason he explained is because they wouldn't, he said pianists tend to write like regular type rhythms, like you know, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16ths, you know. Whereas he said sax players who aren't part of the rhythm section and aren't comping in their left hand would float over it, and they'd get 5 notes in or 7 notes, you know. So maybe it's more like, you know. And you can hear that stretching the time like that. You can hear that in his playing a lot. Ornette Coleman, big influence on him, who does that all the time. Yeah, the sax player influence on Keith Jarrett. Listen for it. You know, listen to some Ornette, Sonny Rollins, Lee Konitz, some of these players who he's mentioned or paid tribute to on albums, and then listen to his playing, and then try to do it yourself. It'll free up your phrasing a lot. You can hear it in all his playing with his trio, actually. Yeah, leave any thoughts you have. Please leave a comment. We're supporting each other. You might say something that inspires me or inspires somebody else, and we help each other like that. So thanks for being here. Good luck with your playing, and I'll see you in the next video, number 15. See you in day 15.